Good afternoon. This is the House Appropriations Committee. It is still Tuesday, January 6th, 2026. It's about 1:30, and we have with us this afternoon the Agency of Digital Services, who we've asked to come back because started getting an education on the whole billing process last year, and then as part of the budget, we said if there in contingency, if there was additional money, that would go to ADS to help with their process. We had the money, and now, as we're going to be doing with all the agencies, we're following up to find out how it's going and maybe get a little refresher on what is the problem, because I'm sure not all of us have remembered exactly what that is. So if you two would like to introduce yourselves and take it away.
Good afternoon. I'm Kate Slocum. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the Agency of Digital Services.
And I'm Denise Riley Hughes. I'm the Secretary for the Agency of Digital Services and the state's Chief Information Officer.
So we have your,
Yes. Put a couple of slides together just in case we needed a bit of a recap, and
great.
we've been able to, over the last 6 months, build what we've been trying to do going into FY27 much more holistically, and then specifically looking at the appropriation or the $15 million, where did that go and why? And you are correct, there's a lot of complexity. And so I appreciate the opportunity to demystify as we can, when we can, because that's what we're trying to do, is actually take it from a very complex, unwieldy process into something that's a lot more predictable, transparent, explainable, and tied to services.
Great. Well, we like that. Sounds good.
Take some time. So I guess we can just kick off if that's okay, going through the slides so we can have a bit of a recap. So one of the things that we've been focusing on specifically is that I know that this committee hears a lot, and others do as well, and we do too, is that my IT bill is complicated and complex, and I don't understand it, and what am I paying for, and what is being billed? And so looking at all of the different services, we can't decouple budget from expenditure to recovery. We really have to look at them as a continued process so that we don't under budget, over consume, and then under recover or over recover. We want to make sure that everything's balanced. And we've been very transactional based over the 8 and almost 9 years. In April, we will be 9 years as an agency. And so we've outgrown the model that we came into as an agency. Everybody's needs are different. And if we decouple the expectations of IT and IT services from the budget piece, it makes it very difficult to recover holistically for expenditures that are being consumed across the state.
So when you say budget expenditure recovery, so you and the department or agency agree on a budget for XYZ project, and you spend all the money, and then you have to get the money back from that agency. Is that sort of what we're talking about?
That's similar. Yes, that's one example. And it's for everything. So I could budget for a particular platform, and then in the middle of the year, the contract renews, and there is a percentage increase of inflation on that contract that wasn't accounted for.
Mm-hmm.
And if I were to look at the actual, let's say, SKU or single SKU, then an agency can come back and say, well, I didn't buy that SKU. I can't pay for that. But what it also did is it helped us identify that we had less than 50% of the departments that had embedded field staff to be able to support them. And so it was creating a lot of flux and lack of controls within the different areas. And you'll see those like bespoke. Typically we would see as project-based costs, but we were starting to see those as operating support costs that are under unique contracts that really should be part of holistic IT services. And so that made things confusing. It also didn't allow us to tie expenditure to either a general fund recovery versus a federal funded recovery or another revenue source. And so we're looking to demystify a lot of that through this process.
Did you have a question there?
Yeah, I mean, terminology, just definitions, do we understand the same thing? When you say services, you're talking about programming, you're talking about
Yeah.
installation of
Yep.
hardware, you're talking about all these different things. That's what you're talking about, services.
Yes.
You have multiple projects going on at any one time, and they may use different number of those services, right?
Yes.
And so it's accounting problems. How do you account for that? And you're in IT, so you have to be able to come up with a nice system for making sure. So, to understand that, we need to know what services mean. I think I understand that part. And I'm just wondering, we all know that there's always costs that you can't anticipate on a project, comes in higher or lower. But and multiple overlapping budgeting model, what are the different budgeting models? I mean, we have different sources of budgeting, but how is it modeled that's different?
So when we were created, you could probably speak to this better than I can because you've been here quite a bit longer. When we were created as an agency, if the agencies were paying for, let's say, for example, their embedded resources, their dedicated IT resources from ADS that were maintaining systems within their department or agency. A person, yep. Some agencies were being invoiced for that under an SLA model. Some were using a timesheet model. And some were consuming and not being invoiced. So it was a complete disparate system that for the same person, for the same series of 40 hours, could have 5 different recovery models for it.
Worked a lot better when I had my own IT guy and was paying.
So you would think that, yeah. However, that's the challenge, is that when we remove uniformity, we start creating a lot of unnecessary risk and a lot of over expenditure. And so that's what we're trying to do, is rein in the expenditure and rein in the cost, because IT is expensive and it is increasing because our digital footprint is increasing. So we're looking at this as a way to move from a transaction-based model, which is also a deficit spend model, into a service-based model that is tied to measures and tangible things, so folks know what it is that they're paying for and what they're getting. But then it also allows the legislature an opportunity to know what you are putting your money to and know where the budget is going. Because it's hard to do that with a series of thousands or tens of or hundreds of thousands of transactions every year.
So have you built yourself your own system, IT system, accounting system to do this? Because it seems to me it'd be once it was built, it'd be fairly easy to maintain.
I'm glad that you asked that. I think at some point you will hear me make a recommendation that we do put funding towards a more comprehensive IT asset management system. We do a lot of great magic with spreadsheets, but we've never actually made an investment in ADS systems or platforms to actually be used across the ecosystem.
John had a question.
Yeah, so you made reference to that skew, kind of that unanticipated
Yeah.
cost that may not be initially anticipated with a particular project. And so what an example of that, I mean, probably lots of examples you have here, so I'd like to hear a few of those, but one of those examples, could it be just simply an unanticipated large increase in like a service contract if you're using a particular platform or agencies using a particular platform? Does my question make sense to you?
That could.
And I'm just asking
Could
that
be
question because I run into a few businesses in the last couple of months here that they use different platforms for like, transfer of funds to the clients, buying something online, for example. And some of the fees that have come out this year have been like 300% of what they initially were in the previous year. So I've experienced that as a business person. I've had to make a significant decision change here, perhaps in that way. And I work with our hospital here quite a bit, and they're going through all kinds of upgrades as well. And they get different kinds of service things that happen like now. They're coming to effect like now.
Yes.
You didn't necessarily know about 6 months ago.
Mhm.
Is that
Very
those
similar.
big examples?
That is an example. What we try to do is mitigate those where we can, or at least be
Yeah.
able to put put something in place so that we can anticipate those and bring attention and resources where that is. But your hospital example is a good one, where if we were to maintain in a transactional model, the only thing that you're ever recording is the individual roll of toilet paper here this many times, but you're not looking at the whole system. And that's what we're missing. I think that
That's what
also
you're
goes
missing.
into the total cost of something. So if you're looking at what are the total costs of an existing IT system, if the state never had that before and they didn't have a system to do that particular thing, it's really hard to anticipate what are going to be the total operating costs, what is going to be the resourcing costs. A good example that we've come into in our analysis have been that we had a really strong timesheet, like we call it timesheet, but a rate that was established 9 years ago. $88 and $84, the only two rates for timesheet recovery that we have. And if you do the math on the amount of time per hour that you can bill, it's a huge deficit spend model. And there's no way for me to put caps or controls on that because that's my only mechanism to track expenditure and cost in that particular area. So we've got to change that.
Thank you.
So you're kind of working to have that uniformity across agencies and departments that we haven't had.
Yes. And also establish what we call core enterprise services. So we've never looked at what are the foundational non-negotiable services that must exist in state government that everybody is buying into, everybody's consuming and everybody's using, but not everybody's paying for. And so I anticipate through this session, you're going to hear a lot about my ADS budget has gone up. Well, but when you look at the whole picture, your total ADS expenditure has not gone up. We're just charging you for what you've been using now.
So you might have, like, everybody uses Microsoft Word probably.
Everybody,
Right.
right,
But maybe not everybody's paying for it.
exactly.
Right.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay. Right.
So all the agencies, well, you get dep IDs for everything, right? Revision systems, so there's. You get
Yeah,
IDs for
so-
everything, so, and then instructions to all the different agencies on how to use those. And what to charge, how to fill them in properly, or not consistent, and they don't know.
So we all follow a chart of accounts, yes, across the executive branch. And each department or unit has an appropriation level, and then they have a SKU of debt IDs underneath that they define. What we do at ADS is we say, for this type of expenditure, please use a specific count code so we can see transparency across. Does that always happen uniformly?
Training problem.
It's manual, so it's,
Yeah.
when you have the choice and you're looking at, 1,000 different account codes, it's going to be tough to decide if you've made the right choice or not.
It could be a training flaw. It could be simply just an understanding flaw as well. And departments have the ability to decide how they're going to structure their budget, even under the guidance that exists. So although we can say you should record it this way if it's an IT expenditure for this type of service, we can't tell them exactly how much to put into that line item and how they should spend against that line. We cannot tell them that.
Get it, but then there could be coming from up on high instructions to all agencies how to do certain things.
There could be more form uniform guidance.
It sounds like that's what you're working.
It is, yes. We've been working very collaboratively with finance and management to that goal.
Okay, let's continue.
So I'll let you speak to this if you'd like to.
Why
as
is
far as
recovery
I think
hard?
we've covered a lot of this. But I think the biggest thing is the bottom one is isolating the true cost is requiring a lot of manual reconciliation. And when you are manually touching things or trying to cross-collate 7 different reports under one, it there's a lot of room for error. And then we also have, I think that you have heard me in this committee share about the credit card SLA. I call the credit card pay now, buy now, pay later. That is also another area that has to reduce dramatically because that allows for the consumption without consideration of where the restrictions are going to be in the future fiscal year to pay for that. So we hold the burden of that expenditure and we don't invoice until the future fiscal year. And that puts the state at a huge disadvantage. So we'd like to see that model go away eventually, but dramatically reduce because that's also one of those areas that has been increasing over time.
You're sort of the bank,
Yeah, we don't
really, for all of the
We wanna be the
IT
bank.
expenditures that the agencies have, right? And then you try to collect on the loan. And it's a surprise when they didn't know they had a loan.
Exactly, yes. That's a great example.
Former banker, what can I say?
Isn't this sort of, I think this is something that I've seen in other institutions. That you really want to go to a purchase order system rather than to an SLA credit card, do it. So that you know what to expect. It has to be approved. I mean, maybe over a certain time, but even with that, you have to reduce that P card or that SLA or whatever it is that's being used and put it in a different system. Are you trying to get that purchase order? And you could also standardize some of that with your chart of accounts, all the things that do certain kinds of
Yes,
equipment, keep it simple,
yes,
have 3 of them instead of 50.
yes.
Is that the stuff you're working on?
That is absolutely what we're working on. And then as far as that purchase order goes, it's not an a la carte for core services, but it could be for field services. So when you look at the requirements that are needed, Agency of Human Services is always a good example because they make up so much of state government. When they have a particular need, but nobody else has that, then they get to have a custom purchase order. But it's unique to them, but they still have to pay for their core services because that's who they have and that's how many people they have. So there are some things that are included, whether you want them or not, the non-negotiables, and then the field services that are an opt-in model.
Okay, one more thing. It sounds like because you've had this thing that's sort of like all over the map, it's hard to build in a budget to say, this is what we want for equipment, because that's what we've done last year and we expect we're going to need one more, or maybe not much more.
Yeah.
And what you do for software and what you do for the little widget, something or others, and what you do for human services for their, whatever the services that, so because you haven't had that kind of continuity or that
Correct.
chart of account categories that are easy to look back at, it's hard for you to budget.
It's hard to budget and it's hard to recover.
Right. And apply.
It's easy to consume.
Yeah.
It's definitely easy for people to spend money, but it is hard to.
One last thing,
control
when
the
you
end.
talk about recovery, you're talking about getting it from the state versus getting it from the federal government versus, you're talking about reimbursement to you.
Reimbursement to us. We actually don't receive any direct federal dollars. Those federal dollars usually are received by departments and agencies across, and then they pay us with the federal dollar if it's eligible for federal.
Right.
So that's recovery, it's your revenue source.
Yes.
Okay.
So I have a question about that, since you brought up federal dollars. Are there times when this structure causes us to leave federal funds on the table because, say, an agency or department doesn't have a tech person there, so they're not the lead or something, and then you end up, or costs if you're analyzing, say, a project that's happening in human services always seems to be having projects. So, and so you bring out a consultant, and if you're paying for it, then they don't get federal funds reimbursement. But if it came through the agency, they would get federal funds reimbursement.
There's a lot of different ways that we can answer that because it's complex. So what I would say is first is our current model before we move to this
Yeah.
inhibited our ability for state resources to be on the delivery side because of the legacy $88-84 didn't fully recover for what was allowable federally. So the federal government a couple of years ago, I want to say it was during the pandemic, had said, we've already updated our model and yours does not match. And so we're forced to use contracted resources at a premium for those types of projects. And we'd like to stop doing that because state resources are the ones that are going to have to manage and support that operationally once it's up and running. I know
And
that
many
you
times we
other-
have the skill set internally. So we should be using that skill set.
So this model actually allows us to do that. We've been working, you worked closely with AHS's CFO team, the business office, working to make sure it's explainable, but moving into a service-based model, all of the components of the service, including resourcing, is accounted for. And it is, so far it has been supported by what we've been
Yeah.
trying to do. So it's an easier opt-in model to be able to, if we have the capacity, bring those resources in when those funds are available versus I have funds, do you have any people? I don't,
Right, so you're saying that this new model will help draw down more federal funds than you're able to draw down now?
that would be the
Yeah.
hope, yeah.
The plan is to, yes, that it is more federally friendly. And I would say that this is also phased. Right now, we're identifying core services. We're going to soon be focusing in the field area, looking at restructuring our rate model to make it more federally allowable. Departments can use that to adequately draw down federal funds and not have to turn to vendor resources every time.
So go ahead, Wayne.
Very thorny problem. Of course, I've had IT, I had my own IT department for a while, and then they get transferred to the other. Pennsylvania, we had IT down there, so I've been involved with these things for 15 years or more, worked on this thorny problem. Problem is, we have many different agencies across the state. They have different kinds of needs, and you as an IT department don't necessarily know what those needs are. And that makes it trouble because, if you have a service thing, you try to make it one box where everything fits, everybody fits into the same box. They don't all fit into the same box. They have different funding mechanisms too, like Fish and Wildlife, we have federal money. If you had to use it for specific purposes, if it bled over into some other area, they were going to come after you and you were going to have to give that money back. Right. So there's a lot of complexities here and
So there are a lot of complexities, and if we were to use that example as a way for us to build our core model around, we would always be fighting fires. We would always be reactive to the support, and we would lose that opportunity for anticipated future costs. When we look at how do we create a like for like, the interesting thing is we're touching almost 2,000 systems across state government today, and so many of them are being used by the same Vermonters. So when we start focusing on user experience and the Vermonter impact, you actually start seeing a lot of those similarities. And then you can start looking at, from a operating support on the business side, the agency side, what does that need to look like? From a finance side, what does that need to look like? And then from an IT support to those Vermonters. Our portfolio model is actually structured in a way to look at that, because what we're seeing right now is we have systems that have IT connections from DMV to public safety to municipal law enforcement to the court system, and none of that is tracked if it's a transaction. It can only be tracked if we start looking at things as an ecosystem and as a service. So when I start looking at, you can touch that system, you need to meet the security requirements. We need to make sure that we've built for the throughput, but then we also have to understand what's happening outside just that one little area. And if I am restricted by, think about that now, do what you need to do, but I'll just charge you later for it, we miss a lot of that user experience impact to Vermonter and the usability of the system overall, but also the longevity of those investments that we're making in the IT systems.
right. And so like SQL, I assume you're using that still. And are you still dealing with other kinds of systems from the old days? They're still out there that can't talk with SQL?
There's fewer and fewer of those systems.
But that
We're
was
actually moving a legacy Linux system right now that is using a legacy open source database system, and we're moving that over to SQL today. So there are some modern technology has allowed us to have some flexibility in fixing some of the restrictions and limitations of the legacy tech. But we want to do it thoughtfully, and we want to do it in a way that doesn't impact the user or the Vermont public who depends on the service. And tying systems to service delivery to Vermonters, that's also something that you can do much more readily in a service-based model as opposed to a transaction. When you don't know who your user community is, you make a lot of mistakes.
John?
Yeah, I assume that thread that you gave the example of from department to agency, whatever it might be here. To track that, you've got to get into each one of those things kind of manually. I'm using that term loosely
Right.
here to do that. Because the systems don't connect to each other here at all, or the information, whether it's transactional or other documentation,
Right.
lots of things,
Right.
right? You know, so what you're moving to is something that'll provide more of that.
It'll
on your end.
demystify a lot of that,
Demystify a
yes,
lot of that.
You
exactly.
like
And
to
so
say a lot, connective tissue.
I do say connective tissue. I do. We want to build a connective tissue because
That's a good example.
that dependency of uptime, reliability, performance, business continuity, that's critically important. And we can't keep our eyes off of the heartbeat. We've got to make sure that things continue running, and then we have less of an excuse to be surprised when it doesn't work or not know why it's not working. So it does create greater accountability for to ADS, and we have greater responsibility in making sure those systems are up and running.
Thank you. I did not serve in the legislature when the agency was created. I haven't really been part of these discussions. Because not my budget, but I think I'm having trouble understanding. I thought that the agency was created in large part to address those very things. And I'm 9 years later, I'm just wondering why we are not further along. And I may be misunderstanding
I've asked
how
the
far
same
along we
question.
are compared to where we were, that's.
I've asked the same question. In all fairness, our statutory obligation is to provide technology services and support to state government. And less than 2 years into being an agency, a global pandemic flipped everything upside down. And we had to take our attention off of something else. So I've come in just shy of 3 years ago, and we started that work when I started. And I realized that the budget cycle is really the determination to that change, because it all ended up coming back to how we build, how we budgeted, and what we could charge for. We didn't have the mechanism or allowance to be able to charge for things that were being consumed. And feelings come into play, but there's also a lot of sensitivities around whether or not it's general fund, whether or not it is federal fund, whether or not it is, fluctuating fee-based revenue. And so we had to be sensitive about how we approached it, and we needed to make sure we had the right buy-in. So finance and management has been working with us for the last 1.5 years. And moving to a service model does level set that budget. And you'll see in future slides, because we were able to pull up some of that both current and future projected change that's happening around the cost. So moving to core enterprise services alone does level set the budget. And what we would like to do is make sure that as we continue maturing around that capacity, performance, and quality of those services, that gives you all the information on whether or not we want to stop paying for something, that there's measures tied to everything that comes along with it. So that capacity is the resources and the people, and sometimes it's the technology, but we've got to look holistically at all of those services. And it also gives a chance that as we start dialing down old services that are not needed, when I say services, I mean IT, that we can do so meaningfully and be informed, because the information and the data is there. And right now it's not. And I don't want to hire outside firms to run numbers on things that we do have the access to. This is something that would be reasonable for Vermont.
And so Marty goes.
I recall, I'm Marty Feltus, and it's nice to meet you separately.
It's-
I'm
Marty has
Kate.
your budget.
And when I worked with your budget before, I recall certainly some of this issue with Kate in terms of, a budget would, another agency would come in and say, oh my goodness, they charged me $500,000 and I didn't expect it, they tell people that. It sounds to me as if you're moving to a more of a core services that everybody is going to pay for, no matter what, whether you use a lot of it or a little bit of it, or that gets covered. And then you can look at the specific things that are for those specific agencies. I would hope then that would help you be more timely in,
Yes.
in assuming, in advising people of what their expenses might be. And
That's our plan, yeah.
yeah.
We'd
So
like to
that
see it be up to
when they
1.
consider it, you can give them an estimate maybe ahead of time, if we go do this, this is gonna cost this much money. And they can determine if that is what they want to do, if that fits within the budget they have or want to seek money for that. And then you can recover it as well. And it's understood ahead of time rather than coming across a surprise a year later that, oh my goodness, we didn't count on this.
Yes, you nailed it.
Yeah.
And I don't like surprises, so I can imagine that they don't either.
No.
So I feel very responsible for fixing this.
Right. I think Wayne and then.
So I'm assuming there never was, in the beginning, any attempt to look at all systems, all departments, all agencies and state government and try to at least get your arms around the mass of the network of the different things that are out there that have to be dealt with, so that you could start working on it. Because, this is like a huge matrix of things going on there. And if you never have a handle on the whole thing, you can't even chunk it up into chunks that might be more manageable. And so probably never happened.
So I wasn't here. And I know Kate wasn't here when the agency was formed as ADS, but you were here
I was
as
here.
another
That's it.
agency. Having had an opportunity to talk to the former CIOs, I know that was built into their plan, and I know that there was some of that was done. But like I said, with the pandemic kicking off, within that, going into that second budget year, it changed things for them.
Might be a good place to use AI.
I don't know.
Yeah, thank you. This is interesting. You're just talking about the ongoing service that you're providing now and trying to make it uniform and make it more predictable and which is, I think it was called DII.
Yep.
Yeah, I was here when we had DII, and I came in just after we had a couple of really big total bombs of IT created, DMV, judiciary, was Health Connect. I mean, you name it. Everybody had these terrible, terrible experiences with trying to implement new IT. And we were going to customize everything. I mean, it just was a huge mess, millions and millions of dollars. And DII was mostly a matter of just helping train people to use it. And it was a very different kind of thing than what you're talking about now.
Yes.
And going back to what Wayne says, nobody had a system or a plan for the whole thing. It sort of kind of got built a little bit at a time. Well, we are supposedly in the process, from what I can remember, maybe last year, the year before that, we're in the process of trying to implement an enterprise system or something is it Workday or?
For ERP.
Yes.
Yes.
And so you're involved in that as well.
Yes.
And that, getting those things off the ground was often the real, I'd say difficult, it was the impossible task. So how are you doing, now you're doing this, and now you are trying to build a new system that will be much more coordinated and hopefully will answer some of these questions. At the beginning, are you having any success with that?
I think we're
Or
having,
where are you with that?
we're having a great amount of success when it comes to our projects. We have a high success rating compared to industry when it comes to our projects and project completion. When I first came here, we were at about 120 active projects. We're scaled down to, I think, under 80 at this point, and we're going to continue seeing that trend going down, is what that anticipation would be. We have just shy of 400 staff within the agency that is supporting across state government. And in some areas, it extends beyond that. So we do have a couple of municipal law enforcement that we support through the work that we do with DPS. And what you're describing makes this all more critical because we have to make sure that we have dependencies and consistencies when we start doing some of these enterprise-wide projects and also the agency-based projects, because technology in general is, it's a small industry. And what I would say is we have less of a challenge with the tech, and we have more excitement happening in the people and the process side than anything else. So the human factor is what plays heavily on whether things are going not so great or great, and making sure that we've got the right champion teams through that makes it all the more successful.
So are you using, for instance, for this enterprise system, which is from what I understand, is a huge system, and any enterprise system is a huge system.
Yes.
And are you using Workday or other contractors to come and help you train so that you can still do the regular work with your regular employees, or how are you handling that?
Yes, we've got 2 partners that are part of the project team, and we also have Workday, who is kind of on the outside, making sure that if their technology is meant to do this, that they are part of that checks and balances on, are we following best practices? Are we doing the right thing? And we're taking an extended time as well. So other states have done this in a matter of 2 to 3 years. We're taking 4 years to do the whole
Okay,
project.
and are you budgeting that separately so that we can see that cost versus the day-to-day integration of what you're doing now? How do
Yeah,
we see
it's
that?
built as separate work streams. So we do see that across all of the project data, where we have funds going to training, where we're focused on the users, what's specific to each work stream. It is all being documented.
So that's all broken down, so.
Probably not to the level that you're describing, but I haven't seen,
Well, it is separately tracked.
you see it
Yeah,
in your
so
invoices.
the ERP project, along with a number of other projects, is funded either through a mix of general fund and IT mod fund, or entirely under IT mod fund. Those are tracked differently. They are not part of base budget. They're not part of what we're talking about as far as the financial restructuring ADS. They are different and separate.
Yes. But you would think if we have core enterprise services and field enterprise services as 2 specific areas around the operations of IT, this is where we would have the structure to be able to say, once the system is up and running, is this a core enterprise service or is this the field enterprise service? Is this an optional that people get to choose to use, or is this something that everybody in state government is using? And that really that's an easy determination. So then we've got the opportunity to build for the maintenance of that and the capacity to support it long-term, which we haven't had in the past.
Thank you. Dave?
Do we have many mission critical IT systems that serve Vermonters that are at risk?
Yes.
And
It depends on what your definition of risk is and mine. So we have security risk, we have technical risk, and we have business risk associated with each one of those environments. There's been a huge investment that the state has made into modernizing some key systems like our DMV system, the UIM system, that have reduced all 3 of those areas of risk pretty dramatically. But yes, the risk still exists and we still have a number of legacy systems.
is the access system still functioning?
Yes, it is. And interestingly enough, the mainframe itself is very resilient. I would not consider that to be on our risk on the security side.
Okay.
What the risk is the front-facing interface for the users. Because the data is reliable, it's a lot harder to break into a mainframe system now than it is a cloud-based SaaS system. So it's just a matter of making sure that we identify exactly where the issues are that we're having. And you may find out that it's not in the technology of the mainframe itself. You may find that it's in the web portal that was never updated with the appropriate level of user account security or something like that.
I remember legislators asking me this regarding the SNAP program.
Mhm.
It wasn't called SNAP then, but in any event, today's SNAP program, how many people on the SNAP program receiving benefits work for large retail employers? They wanted to find corporate employers that weren't paying what they considered a living wage. And you could never, we would do all kinds of workarounds to try to find that out. So, but the IT staff said these things the system was a transactional beast, process applications, but very, very hard. They always used to say code was written like spaghetti. Simple things like, I'm looking at Mike because I know where he lives, but the Brattleboro district office was called LDL. And still is, I'm sure today. And the Morrisville district office was V, something Victor, DL. None of the district office names. So as a new person's coming in, how many apps did they process in Morrisville? We couldn't, so I asked them, can you change all the names to reflect? And they said it's impossible. It's impossible to do. And I said, it sounds so simple. You just can't, they said, can't be there because the code over the years has been layered one on top of another. And if we go in, we risk hurting the capacity to do the transactional work that we do. Does any of that make sense? Have you heard that?
We ran into that with BDOL.
Yes.
Yes, very much so. And that had been customized and configured and reconfigured, and I call it duct tape and Band-Aids.
Yeah.
So much that it was brittle and we didn't want anybody touching it. It was so risky.
Right. It was too risky.
We're not seeing that with Access today, but what you also bring up too is the extreme importance of ensuring that we've identified and qualified the requirements on the business process before we start solutioning the technology. And if we're asking a system to do something that it was never designed to do, then that could be an area of risk that you would consider both business and technical risk, but maybe not security risk. And those are things that we're trying to evaluate as we go through this process to ensure that we're accounting for that. None of that is tracked today.
It was, and it probably still is, two quick stories. When we went through the last potential government shutdown, I remember calling the people who work in the SNAP program, said, could we have Vermont EBT cards? And they kind of chuckled. And they said, not going to happen with our system, Dave, the programming, them, at least not quickly, they said, okay, I appreciate that. And then whenever a grant came through or extra funding and people were excited because there was an opportunity to do a new business system, a more productive, nimble, fluid system, the very best people on our production teams get the work done. The very best people would be pulled out of production and put on a work group for 15 months to design the new program. And we'd backfill with temps who were good Vermonters who wanted to work hard, but knew diddly's, they just didn't know anything. And the production fell down so badly that we started to get what are called ERAs, federal food stamps, SNAP ERAs, very, very serious because there are big financial penalties. But it was when we tried to explain, well, we're building this new system, which is desperately needed because the current system was built in 1980. And you begin to worry about things. Oh, it was a nightmare. And I fear that's probably the same environment people are in today.
we used the concept of core enterprise services when summer EBT was kicking off not this past summer, the summer before. And there was a risk of rolling out the benefits in December for the summer prior. And clearly that's not okay, right? Not acceptable. If the summer starts in June, then the benefit should start in June. If the summer starts July 1st, get them out. And using the concept of core enterprise services, we said, well, data is something that everybody's using. And we were able to bring in the different teams from EDS to be nimble and adaptable so that the developers could continue developing, but they had the right folks on the data team to make sure that we could accelerate that process. And that's the level of flexibility that Vermont needs to be able to make changes on the fly as we grow and change. Thank you for your story. We'd like to minimize those.
I'm already breaking.
Okay, it's all right.
So I think we've really covered, I mean, you went over this. We've covered everything through all of the great questions. So current to future state funding model. I'm very visual. Words on a PowerPoint crush my soul. So I needed the visual here. And color coded wise, it shows you the list on the left, allocation, telephony, timesheet, SLA, bespoke. Those are those categories that you'll see in our budget planning. They're meaningless. So if we were to look in the services and support model, we have core enterprise services, what I call field enterprise, but it's agency solutions, opt-in, opt-out, and bespoke. Bespoke has to remain because that's one of those areas that it's like ad hoc, unique project. We put projects under bespoke so they can live on their own.
Definition.
Bespoke is tailor-made. Tailor-made.
Custom.
It's custom.
Custom.
Yeah,
Custom product.
custom, unique.
Don't you use
But custom in a way that Fish and Wildlife comes forward and they say, we need this specific system only for the wardens. And so, okay, we can work with you to help design what that looks like.
Right. And so what I did, hopefully nobody has color blindness, and I apologize if you do, but if I look at core enterprise services being the dark green circle, those are the 4 areas that we're recovering today based on the services or the products, resources, and tools that we use that make up core enterprise services. So today you're going to see that spread across 4 different areas on the budget and recovery side. So you can never really see the true cost of something because you're seeing it's peanut buttered across everything. Same with agency solutions. We would see agency specific requests coming in telephony, timesheet, SLA, and bespoke. And we'd really like to minimize and reduce that. And then bespoke, we will see in that current model where we were seeing timesheet, SLA, and bespoke as well for one particular SNAP or summer EBT is a good example. We would see that in all 3 of those areas. We streamline it and make it a lot less complex by just saying this is bespoke. And then anything and everything under bespoke, you would use your chart fields and you would have specific project codes that you would use, but everything would be very simplified into 3 areas.
What's SLA? See, the definitions are interesting because you're using terminology
I
I've
know.
heard before. And it seems.
Yeah,
We had that all last year with the service level of agreement.
Yeah.
Service level agreement, what it really represents is products, enterprise products. So certain software, certain app, yes, yeah. Like Adobe would live there.
Or it could be a custom product that you come up with yourself.
Well, SLA, yes and no. It mostly was a product that was used across various agencies and departments as kind of an enterprise tool, but not everybody used it. Some
Yeah.
people had need, not everyone had need for it.
Okay, so let's keep going here.
So I know one of the biggest things that we wanted to make sure that we covered is what was the $15 million spent on? And so this is a chart that we had shared last session with the projection of what we anticipate. And you can see demand is SLA, timesheet, bespoke.
SLA timesheet bespoke.
Thank you. And the dark blue is what we would consider allocation. And in 9 years, that allocation amount, it's not general fund, it's just what the ISF is. It just stayed flat for 9 years. And so it kind of peanut buttered. What we did here was take the $15 million that we would have charged, God bless you, that is being consumed under SLA in 26, that agencies would have seen in their bill in 27, because remember the credit card pay, buy now, pay later. And we applied it to those core services that they're not going to get a double bill for. So that drops the demand budget down dramatically, and it establishes the foundations of core services. And so we would see now over the course of the next continued years that we'd be looking at roughly that amount year over year, unless we anticipate a specific increase, or if we now determine that we are, let's say, underfunded in security and the legislature says we want to give you more money for security, whatever that may be, or if something like a ERP system were to go live. And right now, Vision and VTHR are paid under the Vision Fund. And if the administration says we want to actually consider this under a core enterprise service because everybody's consuming it, it's just easier to build back that way, then you would see that that CES change. But this is just the best visual to show where that money is being spent, is so that people aren't double billed.
I really appreciate you coming in.
I know it's a lot. Thank
More
you.
times we'll really understand it. Every time I understand a little bit more, but the visuals really help. And I think this is a good conversation and helpful for us. So we really appreciate it. I know we'll see you back at once we get the budget.
Yes.
So we'll have more to talk about then. And Marty's your liaison.
It's great to meet you.
So you're in good hands.
Thank you for what
Thank
you
you.
do.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your
Thank you. Thank you all for coming in. So committee, that is it for today. You're breaking us into EC today. That's good. You can continue to review your own budget adjustment pieces and connect with people as you need to. Tomorrow, we're going to start at 9 with the Human Rights Commission, and then the Cannabis Control Board is coming in. We're going to have maybe some ARPA updates and some other things. And in the afternoon is the governor's state of the state address. So that's kind of just the broad view. The agenda you may see getting updated. So keep checking back. We won't start before 9. That's
Will we come back here after the state of the state?
At the moment, we don't have anything.
If I'm not pushing it.
Unless you have an idea, or if you'd like just to.
You forgot to give us homework.
I'll work on that. My point is to give you homework tomorrow.